BIZ Radio.
James MacAskill joins us. He's the co-author of an article that's published in this month's edition of the Global CMO magazine, which is Getting the Job Done, a New Approach to Marketing Wine. Very good afternoon, James. Welcome to BIZ Radio.
Good afternoon, Grant, and thanks for the opportunity to talk to you.
It's absolutely fascinating. The question really is, why did you decide to endeavor on the research of wine marketing?
The issue of the wine sector is that it's a very complex marketing issue, from individual wine producers through to importers, through to retail. And if you have to organize and analyze every particular consumer preference in that market, then it's going to be a very tough job. So we took a very pragmatic approach in our sort of setting this out, which was essentially marketing is about getting the job done. When you think about, you get up in the morning, you wake up in the morning, you've got something to do. You've got a granny's birthday, you need to buy her something. It's a job to be done. And we thought about that in terms of the wine sector and in terms of also the social media, the digital marketing revolution that's coming along. And marketeers are much aligned to that thought as well of getting the job done. And why work with Global Marketing Network is through the Academy Zone is very much helping to inform the learning packages that support product and professional development of the marketeer. And we thought, hey, let's have a look at this in terms of simplifying what is a very complex wine market. So that's what we set out to do.
So you mentioned, in essence, there's a complex customer journey that takes place when it comes to consuming or buying wine off the shelves ultimately. But I see that you broke down into three different categories. Give us a little bit of background behind that.
When you set out in marketing, you're confronted with the 4P strategy or the 4C strategy, which have now evolved into sort of 7 Cs and 8 Cs, which is all about how you essentially define the product, identify the price, and look at how you promote it in the marketplace and how you get it to the consumer in the end of the day. So what we set out to try and get a handle on was defining them in slightly easier to manage terms. And what you technically get are consumers that are identified that need cognitive stimulus. So that's like the grape variety. They're very particularly interested in Pinot Noir or one of the other varieties. Or they're looking for assurances. Is this the right bottle of wine to buy? So we're looking for recommendations or experience from a trusted colleague. Or then you have an area that's about in-store promotional or merchandising. So what's the best value? Who's telling me what the best value is, and how does it fit my budget? So you have these three sort of symbols that you align to in terms of your thought process and brain. You're assuring, getting comfort from the purchase, and then a third party stimulating a purchase in you through promotions or merchandising events.
That makes a lot of sense. But now if we look at it in context of, say, different countries, so South Africa is a wine-producing country. So for me, it's easier to walk into a store and identify a particular region, a varietal, a brand. But say I were to go into a country where it's not a wine-producing region, and I'm bombarded in the store with all these options and choices to make, it does impact on how we approach that as marketers, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think culture is a huge influence on our buying habits, and food and wine are quite tightly aligned. So you tend to get particular varieties or particular wines that are complementary to particular foods and cuisines. And so if you're living in a wine-producing country with a lot of opportunity to try out different sorts of wines, paradoxically, you find out that your choice is fairly limited to the local region. If you go to France or Spain, you have to try quite hard sometimes to find wines from outside the region. In a country such as the UK, very low non-production company, you find that history, that culture is about importing from many different wine cultures, and so your taste and palate are different, and your choice selections are different because you're used to choosing from a global marketplace of wines.
So when we go back to the job to be done model, you mentioned that we all go about our day and we serve or we take part in different roles in that process. What did you break down those different roles of the particular jobs that you refer to?
Yeah, well, what we're trying to do is to simplify the market and understand what it is we need to do. Because I think you have to context in social media. I was speaking to a close friend, Marcus Pfeiffer, who's another colleague on GMN, about brands, and he was saying social media is about an infrastructure, not a media. And I think that's important for us to understand in terms of the job to be done model is trying to set out trajectories. It's trying to understand if you're in one location, how can we move and prompt you along another way? If you're located in one part of the value chain, how can we move you to another part of the value chain? Because that's very important in a very strict wine sector that we have in every country in terms of how wines get through the market and get to the value chain and the supply chain. So in terms of understanding how we broke it down, we tried to break it down into very simple, understandable terms, because at the end of the day, we're trying to convey a passion of a wine product and trying to convey the winery who makes that, the passion they put into that product. So we came up with terms like tradesman, and that's an individual who know what they like to drink. They're very traditional, they're habitual, but they're not going to move very far away from that wine because it satisfies all their needs and wants, really. But then you have another one which is about professional, a sort of apprentice. And that's someone who's new to the market, really enthusiastic, a sponge absorbing everything they know, but they're more susceptible to the sort of promotional merchandising. They're price sensitive to the product, and so they're sort of innocents abroad. They're wide-eyed, bushy-tailed, and they're keen, but they're very easily persuaded. And then you move into the sort of more committed wine parts of the market, which we're looking at a consultant area. The consultants are sort of enjoying the journey. So they're bringing together some understanding of the products and looking at the value of that product and how it satisfies the job they need to get done at the end of the day. And then finally, you have the professor who's this sort of connoisseur. They appreciate the subtleties, they appreciate the bouquet, the terroir, what goes to make up a wine and the subtleties of it.
So far we've identified the environment within which wine gets sold and the value chain thereof, but then also identifying or segmenting the consumer into 4 categories here. But then I guess the intention there is to map out the entire process so that one could get to the digital marketing aspect of it, so that we can say, okay, well, this would be a good touch point to influence.
I mean, that's exactly the point. I mean, the whole background is trying to look at this really strangled market. When you think that something like 80% of the wines in the UK are sold through a retail chain, and there are only 12 major importers in the UK, and 75% of wines are manufactured by producers that are producing less than 300,000 bottles a year. So the small producers are struggling to get through. So what we're looking at in terms of social media is saying, actually, there's a role now for what we call a branding engine. And the branding engine is something that replaces a consumer search. So why would you want to pay some dollars to get high on a ranking of a consumer search, and then next door you've got someone paying some money to outbrand you with another offer? So we're using the getting the job done model to sort of say, how can we move the apprentice to the consultant, both in terms of the individual, but also in terms of a brand? You could think of the brand, a consultant brand or an apprentice brand, and place them in this area where you're using social media to move them along the value chain.
Makes a lot of sense. So where do you see this study moving forward?
What we're trying to do at the present moment is get a handle on the interests of local wineries to understand what they're trying to do. At the present time, people think of social media as a media, And so they've got YouTube channels, they've got Twitter feeds, and they've got Facebook and such like. But when you look at them, they're taking you away from the brand. They're taking you away from the experience, the passion of that winery. What we're looking at is refining all that and crystallizing that all down into what we call the branding engine sort of mode. So it gives the people an entire experience of a YouTube, Facebook, Twitter experience, but in one portal. And in understanding these terminologies, it's really trying to understand and convey for the winery, the concerned, where they side. Are they selling locally? Are they selling internationally? Can they sell internationally? I mean, interesting things that I think you've got some new wine producers in the Stellenbosch who are selling bottles of wine at 250, 2,000 odd rand a bottle, and they're trying to break into the market, and they're selecting to become a very particular, almost professor stance of brand. It says, look, here we are. We've got lots of, passion in our brand. It's very selective, and try that out in the market. So the ultimate destination for us is to allow the smaller, more passionate wine producers to understand their position in the market and to be able to bypass some of the bottlenecks in the market through better use of social media. And that allows them to enter and experience new markets, new opportunities, and hopefully wider markets for their products.
It's a highly competitive industry, and we know that coming from South Africa. You hear of farms shutting down because they couldn't meet not the demands really, but compete really, because it is one of those things. You either choose to produce the volumes and make very little off that, but sell on volume, or you decide to go niche high end and then price your bottles rather expensively and then hope to survive that. But it is interesting to see how it almost seems like what the study is trying to do is to firstly understand it for what it is, as opposed to going on a lot of misconception that there is out there about how you market wine.
Well, I think, again, we're supporting GMN in producing some really practical simulations, activities that support marketeers, how to get the job done. It's not about some fantasy theoretical analysis. What we're trying to say here is, if you really want to sell wine and you are a small producer who doesn't have an importer, can't persuade an importer, doesn't get through to the importer and therefore can't make the retail chain, how do you market that? And there are some practical issues. You're quite right. It's a very competitive business. I looked at some figures recently, and South African wines in the UK, number 8, number 15 in sales. But South Africa, in terms of wine volume, is bigger than French imports. But when you look at it in detail, most of that's coming as bulk wine. So you're selling the value out of the country to someone in the UK to bottle and rebrand. That doesn't make sense to us in terms of a modern digital strategy, a modern supply chain, value chain. You can reach the market, you can do it differently. And I think that's the model that we're aiming for, how to help smaller producers in the market to compete more effectively.
Well, Dr. James MacAskill, thanks so much for spending time with us and unpacking this. And I'm sure we'll hear more on this study, because it seems like you only are at phase 1 of it.
We're keen to grow our numbers of participants, really. So anyone who's listening, please contact us, or they can follow our Twitter at Job to be Done if they want to become involved. We're very happy to help out.
And what are you looking for specifically? Are you looking for marketers within the wine industry? Are you looking for anyone that's in the industry that's keenly interested in growing the industry?
We're very keen to speak to small, passionate producers who are interested in moving up the chain. We're interested in looking at the importers, but also from the brand marketeers as well, who are handling the current brands and how they do it, and whether we can add a different perspective to it. I mean, my life history has been about transition management, getting through silos, and I think the wine industry is a classic silo of thought and process. And we sort of look at getting the job done as a sort of disruptive approach to pragmatic marketing. Get the job done, understand what you have to achieve.
Absolutely brilliant. Well, thanks so much for spending time with us, and we look forward to catching up with you again.
Okay, well, thanks, Grant. We look forward to giving you an update.
Excellent.
BIZ Radio.